Welcome to Siofra's Magic Alcove. I'm Siofra Bradigan. So someone wrote in and asked if I would talk on the subject of mirrors and magic. So that's our subject for today. So anytime, you have questions about what we're talking about, feel free to ask after the video is up and running. Mirrors are in ancient times considered doorways to the other side. And there's a reason for that because of the fact that that reflective surface that they have mirrors the real world but is the opposite of what we usually see. So, like when I'm doing paranormal investigations, one of the things I always close when I'm finishing up when I'm after I've cleared a house, if I'm going to seal the house, I always seal the mirrors as well as the water inlets and outlets and corners and doorways and windows. Those are all ways that something can be in your space when you don't want it to be. And partly because of that and, myths and things like that, people often have a love-hate relationship with the mirror to start with. So some of the things I've used mirrors for, in the beginning, I did a lot of mirror gazing, and where you just sit in front of a mirror and you have low lighting and you look at your own face in the mirror, soften your eyes and kind of let them go out of focus, and then see what happens. Generally, the first thing that starts to happen when you do that is you start to see your face morph into some other face. I have seen my face as different women, different ages, sometimes different sexes, different races. There's like, it can really transform into almost anything. And when you first start doing that, when that happens, it's somewhat startling, and people, you know, they don't know what to make of it. I personally don't think it's anything dangerous. I don't think that you're opening up a portal to another dimension where bad things are going to come out. I think more likely that what you're doing is you're learning how to see some of your own past lives, the faces that you've worn throughout time. Although at some point you can also use a mirror for divination as a scrying tool and for communicating with spirits. But in the beginning, just looking at yourself in the mirror, learning how to unfocus your eyes, allowing your physical eyes sight to kind of check out, and then you're getting the other type of sight checking in. So it's a way for training your abilities and for learning how to accept the unexpected, I guess, because it is still just you. There's nothing else going on, but you're seeing you. And other things that people can do with mirrors along those lines. Starhawk had one exercise in one of her books when I first started using her book in the early 80s, where you put a bowl of water at your feet and stand in front of a full length mirror if you can, and naked, and look at yourself. And as you gaze at yourself, the idea here is accepting what you look like as being okay, beautiful, and acceptable, and so forth. And every time you get a bad feeling, you look at something and you think you don't like that shape, or, whatever it happens to be, you try to take that feeling and put it in the bowl of water at your feet. And so you keep doing that until you can just look at yourself and not have any of those feelings come up. So it's a good exercise in self-acceptance, and mirror is definitely a way of doing that. So mirrors are by nature reflective, and because they are naturally reflective, we can use them to reflect things away from us. So for example, this is an example of a small craft mirror that you can get in just about any kind of a craft store. I think it's like an inch and a half, 2 inches, or something like that. I haven't measured it. But it's a little square mirror. In any event, they're not that expensive. You can find them easily. And one of the things I do in my house, because I know more people, or know more people know about me, or whatever it is. And I'm fairly sensitive to thought forms and energy coming from other people, is I put these in my windows facing outward and reflect. I charge them up to reflect energy, negative energy coming at me from somewhere else, so that I don't get a barrage of other people's thought forms coming into my space. I figure their thought forms are theirs to take care of. So it sits there passively waiting for something to activate it. And then it's also uh, charged to send whatever the energy is back to the person who sent it to me. So that's an easy self-defense thing that you can do for your property, especially if you're going through a bad breakup with somebody. It really can help to kind of keep them out of your headspace, and both literally and figuratively. So, in that same line, the reason I have just one of these right now is someone was making a mirrored box, and then she decided not to. And so this is her mirrored box. She used this size mirror to make it. And the idea is, after you make this box with all the mirrors facing inward, she puts in what she's trying to reject, or seal up, or a person that she's trying to make them deal with their own energy and leave her alone. And you put that in the box and seal the box up, and then you have yourself a nice little mirrored cube, and then you go bury that somewhere and let it do its thing. I talked about this in my video on spellcraft, but that's sort of the idea. And you don't have to use actual mirrors for that particular spell. You can use aluminum foil, which is also reflective, so you can make it out of any shaped box. And personally, this is small. I would have to think of how I could use this being so small. I wouldn't be able to do a traditional poppet in there. I'd have to like do other stuff to make it work for that purpose. But anyway, she gave it back to me, so I have this, and I thought it'd be good to show to you guys. So that's that kind of thing for a mirror. Then there's the magic mirror. This is one of our, what we call a magic mirror. This is just a frame where the glass has been taken out and painted black on the underside. And then inside of this, we have placed a charge, like a paper towel or something absorbent like that, that soaked up our fluid condenser. So then you can charge the mirror to do whatever you want it to do. So you can charge them up for absolutely anything. This one is charged up with healing energy. We have it sitting in our living room, and so it sits there and just puts out this kind of energy into the space to try and keep us healthy, and so forth. But you can put other kinds of energy in there, like calmness or serenity or happy thoughts, or whatever it is you might be working with. And then you can also use the same type of thing as a scrying mirror, because it's a black flat surface, and you can use it as any kind of a black mirror. You can gaze into it and see what you get, try and communicate. So it's pretty simple to construct. You just get yourself a inexpensive frame and take the glass out and paint it and put it in. You don't have to go buy a fancy one. Well, actually, and with the frame, like this is a wooden frame, if we wanted to, we could put like magical symbols around the outside of this if we wanted to make it more specific to something, or to give it another level of potential energy that it would be working with, and that kind of stuff. So sort of whatever your creative juices tell you to do, you can do with just a piece of glass and turn it into a mirror. So if you don't have like a full-size mirror to work with for some of the exercises, you can always get like a small, inexpensive kind of mirror, just sort of a face mirror, and then you can use that to do the same kind of exercises where you're looking at the mirror, letting your eyes relax, and and see what's in there, or use it as a scrying tool because you're trying to see into the future or to see at a distance. And the more you practice that softening and letting the image in the mirror change, the easier that kind of scrying will become. Because before you can do that, you have to be able to let your own face disappear and let something else come in its place. So it's like definitely part of the whole training process of what to do. And then you can use the concept of mirrors in other things. Like I have my own personal energy shield that I work with. I have it programmed as like different colors of light, sort of on the surface of my personal bubble. And I think of it similar to like oil on water, sort of. It's the oil, the different colors and stuff, and my shield is the water it floats upon, energetically speaking. And if someone sends me some nasty negative stuff, it's programmed to immediately turn into a mirror on at that point and send the energy back to the person. Now there's different schools of thought when it comes to sending people back their own energy. There are some people that think that's a negative thing to do, and if you're one of them, you don't need to use this at all, and that's perfectly fine. My take on it is if it's their energy and they're putting it out there, it's their responsibility to deal with it, not mine. Because it can be an invasion of my space, and I'm not under any obligation to accept their energy just because they're shooting it out in my direction. And it's a good habit to get into of you need to know who you are and what your energy is before you can be certain that you're rejecting not yourself but other kind of thing. And so the mirror gazing, accepting yourself, looking at who you are, and being okay with what you look like is part of that process of accepting self-awareness. Um, we are all different shapes and sizes. We're all different colors, all different ages. And no one particular form is better than another. It just happens to be the form that we're in. And as someone who remembers a lot of different forms and shapes from different lives, it's, easier for me in that sense to just sort of accept the one that I'm in right now. And without that, though, it's like you're fighting yourself. And you want to do all the different things that you can in order to get to know yourself and to accept yourself for where you're at, because change and transformation isn't possible unless you actually have a baseline of where you actually exist to move forward from, or to move from forward, not necessarily the right direction, just that sense of moving into another version of who you are that you want to be in the future. So I have, you can use those mirrors, the outward facing ones, not just in your windows, but if you're in an apartment building, things get a little bit more complicated for people to try and figure out how to shield apartment buildings. And because you've got people above you, below you, and all sides of you, and you can use that mirror technique there, because it's the idea of putting the mirror up on the wall facing away from you, so that, okay, the people in this apartment, their thoughts don't come through my wall, and the people in that apartment, their thoughts don't come through my wall. And if I have an outside wall, then those thoughts don't come through my wall, my window, or what have you. You can put them on the floor facing down if you have people under you, and put them on a ceiling facing up if you have people over you. There's no reason why it has to be visible to anyone on the outside in order for it to work, because it's that concept, that notion of reflection that you're tapping into by using a physical object that does reflect. And so along those lines, like with the scrying mirror kind of thing, you can use any kind of thing that's reflective, like the reflective crystal a bowl of water, that's reflective. Um, and you know, and we we set up a large brass bowl that we have on a stand, and I filled it with black felt and filled it up with water because there were three of us, and we were all three of us trying to use it as a scrying tool. And every time I looked into it, I saw it getting knocked over. That's all I could see was it getting knocked over. Sure enough, it got knocked over, and all the water went splaying all over the place. So apparently that's me because I saw that with my very first crystal ball. The first thing I saw in it was my husband at the time going to touch it and it leaping off its stand onto the floor. And sure enough, that's what it did. It didn't want him to touch it because I did not want him to touch it. I'm sure that that was a direct response to me starting or trying to find something that was my own that belonged only to me and wasn't like interfered with. In that relationship, there was a lot of stuff like that where he would read all my mail and everything else. So privacy was a big issue for me. And yeah. So when you're thinking of doing a spell where you need to send energy away, the idea of the mirror is definitely a good one to come up with. There's probably other examples that aren't coming to mind right now, but yeah, I had an example that I put in my thought forms video of using mirrors, which I hadn't thought of before. I read it in a book somewhere, and I don't even know what book it was, but I had a housemate that was really angry with me, and we shared a wall. Like my bedroom was here, her bedroom was like right there, and I went to bed, and I started seeing all these thought forms in my room as I'm trying to drift off to sleep. And I'm like, okay, so I grounded them out to get rid of them and tried to go to sleep. And then the room filled up with them again. I did that about 3 or 4 times. And then I started looking at them more closely and realized they weren't mine. And I could see them coming out of my bedroom mirror. They were just flowing out. And that dresser that had that mirror was on the shared wall with her room. And then I knew what was happening, that she was sending me all these thoughts because she was mad at me for who knows what, I can't remember. And I spontaneously picked up a small not a hand mirror, a mirror on a stand I'd picked up at like a secondhand store or something like that. And I just picked it up and I turned it around to face the mirror on the dresser to bounce all of them back and keep them out of my room. And I did that. My room cleared up. I went to sleep, no problem. Got up in the morning and she looked like somebody had been beating on her all night long. She did not look good. And I looked at her and I said, so how did you sleep last night? She says, I didn't sleep at all. I said, it's not nice to send all those nasty thoughts to somebody. She says, I know, but I couldn't stop myself. So she did it all to herself. Maybe she learned a lesson from it. Maybe she didn't, who knows. But again, that was sort of just a spontaneous use of a mirror to defend my space, similarly to what we're talking about, using them like around the house. But this was for a specific, almost psychic attack, I would say, because she was really spreading those negative thought forms around pretty well. So anything that has a reflection is really a mirror, like the water, the ocean, moonlight shining in the water. These all create kind of doorways to a different kind of sight and sometimes a different realm. So you can also use mirrors after you get acquainted with the other properties of them and are comfortable with things looking different. You can actually use a mirror to try and go through into a mirror to talk to a spirit in their kingdom. It's one of the ways to enter into the spirit world is through a mirror. And then if you do that, keep in mind, that that's the way to go back to your own realm when you're finished, is back through the back side of the mirror into your ordinary reality. It makes a good sort of transitional concept to help your brain let go of like this is my room, or this is my house, this is my floor, these are my walls, and get yourself out of that space and into your mental construction of a space and allowing it to change and transform. And I've had a couple of times in a paranormal investigation where it seemed that someone was sort of like their spirit got trapped in a mirror. And that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of the old folk tales, when somebody dies in a house, they cover up all the mirrors, and that's so that the spirit doesn't think that that's the entrance to the other side, and it keeps them from getting stuck inside of a mirror. Now, in that one case, I wasn't sure if it was actually the energy of the individual who was stuck in the mirror, or if it was just the image of them left over from their death that was stuck there. But I cleansed and grounded the mirror anyway, because it just seemed to be, an iffy situation when I could pick up on that well. And so buying old things can be problematic, especially for people who are sensitive, but pretty much for anybody. So if you're going to go buy yourself a mirror, unless you really know something about that mirror and it just seems to be the only thing that's going to work for you, I recommend new, so you don't have to worry about, the possibility of.
Also,
Yeah. Right. So we have lots of ways for fixing these issues. If you do end up with something whose energy you're not sure about, you can go through the 4-element cleansing, banishing the negative energy, clearing it out, and that kind of thing. But people often have a love-hate relationship when it comes to mirrors, and it's probably similar to that the relationship that a lot of Aboriginal people had to cameras and having their picture taken. The idea that your reflection can get trapped in an object is sort of, the fear and anxiety that if your reflection is trapped in an object, then is a part of you, your spirit, your essential self, can they get trapped in the object as well. I think that's probably not the case, but any of those things, if a group of people believe in them strongly enough, then they can become real when it comes to, the actualization of that. So looking at your own beliefs when it comes to mirrors and what they are, your own cultures, stories, and myths around a mirror, whether it's a good idea for you to use one or not, is important, because unless you're going to go in there and sort of transform those beliefs and replace them with something else, you're going to set yourself up for having a bad encounter, or something that you might think of as disastrous, because you have this subconscious and unconscious belief system that says you do this thing, then this other thing is going to happen. And if you're not aware of the fact that you have that, then you're, it could be bad. Because we're really good at messing ourselves up, better than anybody that I can think of. So that's pretty much my use of mirrors when it comes to my own practice and the kinds of things that I do with them. You can probably think of some other ideas on your own, and if so, feel free to share them with our other subscribers, or, because it's always fascinating to see what different cultures have and how they perceive these things, and the differences as well as the similarities around the world. One of the things I'm finding fascinating about doing this channel is the feedback and people from different cultures talking about what they've heard or seen, or thought or felt, or what have you. So we did get our internet upgrade, but it wasn't as high as we hoped. As far as the upload speed goes, it's a little bit better than it was when we failed.
I think we should be able to do okay at 480.
So we're going to try and do a live show tomorrow afternoon, and we're going to do it at low resolution so that we have the best chance of getting it out there. So if I'm fuzzy, that's why. And if that for some reason doesn't work, we'll wait till we can get fiber. which is actually only about a month or so out. And once we get fiber, we won't have a problem. I mean, that'll like our ability to do better videos is going to just jump through the roof when we get fiber. I'm very excited about the possibilities. So we're gonna try again to do the conversations about your questions about the Fae, the She, anything that has to do with the nature spirit kingdom, and then of course anything else that might come up. Feel free to ask, and we'll answer the questions. So hopefully that's going to work, and we'll be able to see you then tomorrow. So this is Siofra Brad again, and this has been Siofra's Magic Alcove. Blessed be.